Hello friends, we know that a given linear programming problem can be solved by using a method called as simplex method. Now we have already seen what a simplex method is in our previous lectures. Make sure that you go and watch those lectures to understand what a simplex method is. But there is a drawback of using a simplex method, and the drawback is a simplex method can be used only when the subjective functions are of less than or equal to type, isn't it? A simplex method can have or can be used only when the subjective functions are having less than or equal to type in equations. So that's one of the drawbacks of the simplex method. Now this drawback has been overcome by a mathematician whose name is Abraham Charnes. He developed a method called as the penalty method, or it is also called as the Big M method, for solving linear programming problems which will be having greater than or equal to type of subjective functions. That means the drawback, the limitation of the simplex method has been overcome by the Charnes method. The drawback was what? If you want to make use of the simplex method, then your subjective functions has to be less than or equal to type, whereas the Charnes method can be also applied to those subjective functions where you have greater than or equal to type of inequations. So in our lecture we are going to start with this particular method. Let's see what Charnes method is. So friends, let's understand what this Big M method or the Charnes method or the penalty method is. Now there are some rules that you have to remember while solving this particular method. Make sure that you have taken a pen and a paper so that you can keep on making the notes, the very important notes, while I am explaining the concept. Now we will be taking an example to understand what this method is. The very first rule that you will need while solving a problem by the Big M method or the penalty method is that your objective function has to be of maximizing type. Now this was a requirement in our simplex method also. The simplex method also demanded that the objective function has to be of maximizing type. So here also the penalty method or the Big M method, the first requirement is that the objective function has to be of maximizing type. So I can see that my question is of minimize z equal to 4x1 plus x2. So the very first thing that I'll be doing is I'll be transforming the minimizing function into a maximizing function. So let's do that first. So I'm going to write here maximize z dash is equal to minus of z, isn't it? We remember how a given objective function can be transformed from minimizing to maximizing. We just put up a negative sign both the sides of the objective function. So that is what I have done here. So z dash equal to minus of z is equal to minus of 4x1 and minus of x2. So that's the first thing that I have done. I have transformed a given objective function from minimizing type to maximizing type. Now do you remember in simplex method we have learned something called as a slack and a surplus variable. Now students, I strongly recommend you that you first go and watch my previous lectures on simplex method right from the very first lecture till the last lecture. That will give you a good sound background to understand this particular topic also. So make sure that you go and watch my lectures on my YouTube channel Pankaj Lade. Now let's come to this particular question. We have minimizing function, we have transformed it into a maximizing function. Now as I said, in simplex method we remember that if our inequation is of the greater than or equal to type, then we add something called as a surplus variable. Actually we subtract the surplus variable, isn't it? And if you have a less than or equal to type of inequation, we add a slack variable. So there were two variables we have learned, a slack and a surplus variable. Whenever the inequation is of greater than or equal to type, we make use of the surplus variable, and if it is a less than or equal to type, we make use of the slack variable, isn't it? Now the simplex method was used only for subjective functions that were having less than or equal to type. The Charnes method or the Big M method or the penalty method can be used for inequations of greater than or equal to type. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add the slack and the surplus variables depending on what kind of inequality is there. If there is a greater than or equal to type of inequality, then we will put up a surplus variable, and if it is a less than or equal to type of inequality, we will put up a slack variable. So I have two inequations. Now, have you observed the first subjective function given to me is an equality type of subjective function? Is it the constraint is an equality type of constraint? Such kind of constraints do not need slack or surplus variables. Remember this statement very carefully. When your subjective function is of equality type, at that time you will not need a slack or a surplus variable. Slack and surplus variables are needed only and only if you have the inequation of less than or equal to type or a greater than or equal to type. So I will need only two variables, the slack and the surplus variables, for the two inequations, isn't it? One inequation is of greater than or equal to type, so here I will need something called as a surplus variable, and the other inequation is of less than or equal to type. Here I will need something called as a slack variable. From here I'm going to remove the surplus variable. From here I'm going to add the surplus variable. So subtraction and addition is going to happen in the two inequations. Now, the next important thing, that is what you want to remember. Make sure that you are going to note down this particular statement somewhere in your notebook. It's a very important statement. Whenever you are solving a problem using the Big M method, then we are going to introduce a new concept called as artificial variables into those subjective functions or the constraints which are of equality type as the first one, or which are of the greater than or equal to type. Now students, is very important. Make sure that you are noting down this particular statement in your book. Whenever we are solving a problem by Big M method, then we are going to introduce a concept called as an artificial variable. Let us not worry what an artificial variable is at this moment. I am going to explain what an artificial variable in a short while from now. But remember that whenever you are solving a problem, a given linear programming problem using the Big M or a Chinese method or the penalty method, then if you have an equality constraint, if you have a subjective function with an equality constraint, it will get something called as an artificial variable. If you have a subjective function with greater than or equal to type, it will also get something called as an artificial variable. So these two subjective functions, the equality type and the greater than or equal to type, these are going to require something called as an artificial variable. Now students, I'm going to add something called as an artificial variable. Now let us see what is an artificial variable and why it is needed. Now again, I'm telling you have to watch my previous lectures on simplex method to understand what I am talking about here. You remember in simplex table we had something called as the basic variables. Here also I'm going to draw a table where I'll be putting something called as a basic variables. Now basic variables were those variables which were obtained from something called as the basic matrix. And you remember that the basic matrix was a unit matrix, isn't it? The basic matrix was a unit matrix, and from there we have derived the basic variables. Here what problem I'm going to face? Observe. I have the first inequation, I have the first subjective function as an equality type of constraint, isn't it? My first subjective function is an equality type of constraint. That means it will not need slack or the surplus variable. But if I go ahead with the next inequation, which is a greater than type of inequation, or there if I write 4x1 plus 3x2. Now since I want to put an equality sign here and it is the left hand side is greater than the right hand side, I should subtract the next variable, isn't the surplus variable has to be subtracted from here. So minus of s1 I will do here. Then there is another inequation, so I'll write plus 0s2 and then becomes equal to 6, isn't it? And the next inequation if I take, it is x1 plus 2x2 plus 0s1 plus, it is a less than type of inequation, so I'm going to add a slack variable, plus s2 becomes equal to 4, isn't it? Now let's say if I'm going to transform this into the simplex table, I'll be getting the coefficients of x1, x2, s1, s2 as 4, 3, minus 1 and 0, whereas the next equation is going to give me the coefficients as 1, 2, 0 and 1. Now have you observed the slack and the surplus variables over here are not making a unit matrix, isn't it? A basic matrix was needed to decide the basic variables that we write over here, and here I'm not getting a basic matrix, I'm not getting a unit matrix. Because of this minus 1, this matrix cannot be called as a unit matrix. So that's the challenge, and that is why we are going to add something called as artificial variables. These variables need not be calculated. We do not need the values of these artificial variables, isn't it? So these artificial variables will be introduced to take care of the basic matrix. So that is what a artificial variable is. Artificial variable will be introduced into the subjective functions to take care of the basic matrix. I need a basic matrix to get the basic variables, and if I have a negative sign somewhere here, I cannot get a basic matrix. So that is what the need of an artificial variable is. So students, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to introduce artificial variables, and remember that the artificial variables will be added to those subjective functions where you have an equality sign or you have a greater than or equal to type of inequation. Note down this point very carefully, that if you have or if you want to add an artificial variable, it will be added to those constraints which are either of the equality type or they are of the greater than or equal to type of inequation. So students, let's add what this artificial variable is. So I am going to reform my statement over here. So observe how it has been transformed into the standard form. Getting the standard form is the very first important thing that you should be doing while solving a question, either on the simplex method or on the big M method. Now let's get the standard form. So here I can see that the first subjective function, the first constraint is an equality type, so I don't need the slack or the surplus variable, but it will have something called as an artificial variable. Further, I can see there are two inequations, isn't it? There are two inequations, so they will need one slack and one surplus variable, because one of them is a greater than type of inequation, one of them is a less than type of inequation. So let's write it down. So I'm going to write the second inequation first. So I have 4x1 then plus 3x2. So this will need a surplus variable. So minus of s1. I have one more inequation. It will have plus 0s2, isn't it? And then since this is the second subjective function, I'm going to add something called as a artificial variable. It's a second subjective function, second constraint. So I'm going to write plus 0a1 from the previous one. I have one more subjective function, which is 3x1 plus x2. Now I can see that there are two slack and a surplus variables involved. So I write plus 0s1 plus 0s2. Since this is the first subjective function and it's an equality type of subjective function, so I'm going to write plus a1, the artificial variable, the first artificial variable for the first subjective function or the constraint, and I will need one more artificial variable for the greater than or equal to type. No artificial variable is required for the less than or equal to type, isn't it? So these points you should always remember. So make sure that you are also simultaneously noting these points down. So an equality constraint needs artificial variable. A greater than type of equation also needs artificial variable. So I need two artificial variables. There are two inequations present, hence I need a slack and a surplus variable. So that is why total variables which I'm going to get is a slack surplus variable, so two of them, and two artificial variables. So there is s1, s2, a1 and plus 0, a2. So did you get this how the transformation has happened here. The first constraint, which was already an equality constraint, has now been transformed into an equation. It is equal to 3. Okay, so that's the transformation of the first inequation. Let's move ahead with the second inequation. So that was 4x1 plus 3x2. Then you know why this minus s1 has come. Then 0s2 because one more inequation is present. Then 0a1 because artificial variable was added in the first equation. And then this will also need an artificial variable. So I'm going to write plus a2 is equal to 6. So this is how I have transformed the given inequations, the subjective functions, into equations. So one more is left. Let's write the last one also. So we have x1, then we have plus 2x2, then I will need a slack variable here, but already one surplus variable was added, so I'm going to write plus 0 s1 plus s2, isn't it? And then plus no artificial variables needed, so plus 0 a1 plus 0 a2 is equal to 4. And obviously the non-negative constraints, the non-negativity constant that I'm going to write. So there are already two decision variables involved, x1 and x2. I have got a slack and a surplus variable, so which is s1 and s2, and two artificial variables which are a1 and a2. So these all variables has to be greater than or equal to 0. So this is how I have transformed the subjective functions into equalities. Now, how many variables have been appearing over here? So there was x1, x2, the decision variables, the slack and the surplus variable s1, s2, and the artificial variable a1 and a2. All these variables need to be written into the maximizing function also. So now pay proper attention. You are going to learn something new over here. So I'm going to write my objective function as minus of z. So let's write here minus of z, or I can say z dash is equal to minus of z. It is equal to, so I'm going to write the first term minus of 4x1, the next term is minus of x2, isn't it? Then what I'll do here is I'm going to write minus of 0s1 and 0s2. Now you remember that writing negative or positive sign is not going to make a big impact because it is 0, 0, isn't it? So when negative sign or a positive sign multiplies with 0, it is ultimately going to be 0 only. So it does not matter whether we write a negative sign or a positive sign. But let us make a habit of writing a negative sign. You will come to know why this negative sign has been done. Listen carefully. The name of this method is called as a penalty method. Now what is a penalty? Penalty is something that you are going to take away, isn't it? If you understand the meaning of the word penalty, it is a very common word that we use. Penalty means something has been taken away, isn't it? We can be penalized. Penalized means what? We can be penalized monetarily. That means someone will come and take our money. So here also we are going to give a big penalty to the objective function. This penalty is denoted by capital M. We are going to denote the penalty by capital M. That is why the name big M, big stands for a very large value. M stands for the value, the penalty that you are putting on the objective function. So we are going to put up a penalty. Now since you are putting up a penalty, that means you are removing out something, isn't it? You are taking away something. So that is why you will put a negative sign here with a very large penalty multiplied with the artificial variables. So how many artificial variables we had here? We had two artificial variables, a1 and a2. So I'm going to write minus of ma1 and minus of ma2. So that is what the big M method is. So what we have done, let's revise these things very quickly. We have the penalty method used for those type of questions where you have a greater than or equal to type of an inequation, isn't it? Then the problem should be of maximizing type. So we have transformed it into a maximizing type. Then if you have an equality constraint or a greater than or equal to type of constraint, then we add something called as an artificial variable. So I've added the two artificial variables a1 and a2, and then we will put up a big penalty on the objective functions by multiplying the big penalty m with the artificial variables a1 and a2. Now this is what the standard form is going to look like. Now what this method is, let's move ahead to understand how the question will be solved by using the penalty method. So friends, so far we have transformed a given linear programming problem into a standard form. Now what the next step is, we have to make again a simplex table, isn't it? So the same table we are going to regenerate here, what we have learned in the simplex method. It will contain a basic variable, then the coefficients of all the decision and the slack and the surplus and the artificial variables, then obviously the right hand side of the equation, the subjective functions, and the minimum ratio. So I'm going to construct a simplex table, but to begin with the simplex table, the next important thing that you have to do is to remove these big penalties from the objective function. You got to get rid of the penalties, the big penalties that you have put up in the objective function. Now this is a1 and a2, isn't it? The artificial variables involved are a1 and a2, and these two artificial variables can be observed in the first subjective function and the second subjective function. So I can make use of the first and the second subjective function to remove the penalties from the objective function. So what we did initially is we have put up big penalties on the objective function, and now to construct the simplex table, what I need to do is to remove these penalties from here, isn't it? So that is what I'm going to do now. So let's proceed further. Let's see how it can be done. So the steps are very important. I want you to pay proper attention. Make sure you have taken a pen, a notebook, and you are noting down these important steps simultaneously. So as I said, I'm going to remove these big penalties from the objective function, and how it can be achieved. Take a look. Over here I can see ma1, it can be removed from this a1 by multiplying this entire equation with m. So I'm going to multiply this first subjective function throughout by m, and take a look at one very important task I'm going to perform here. I'm going to multiply this subjective function with m. So multiply throughout by m. So I'm going to multiply this entire equation throughout by m, but look at the way I'm going to write this equation. I'm going to transform it into an expression. I'm going to transform this into an expression. So I'm going to write it as 3mx1 plus mx2, then plus m into 0 becomes 0 only, 0s1, m into 0s2, so again it is 0s2, plus ma1 now, plus ma1, m into 0 is again going to be 0, so 0a2, and equal to 3m is transformed on the left side and written as minus 3m. So this is one very important note you got to make. Very important. What I've done is I've transformed the 3 on the left hand side, multiplied with m and transform it on the left hand side, and transform this into an expression. If you take a look at this, it's an expression now. It does not have an equal to sign. I'm going to call this as equation number 2 or expression number 2. So I multiplied this with 2 with m. The expression 2 has been multiplied throughout with m. Let's go to the next one. Over here also I'm going to multiply this with m. So again multiply throughout by m. So let's multiply throughout by m. So now if I multiply this entire equation with m, see what I'm going to get. The first thing I'll be getting is 4m x1, isn't it? Then plus 3m x2 minus of m s1 minus of ms1, then m multiplies with 0, you get 0s2, m multiplies with again 0, 0a1, and m multiplies with a2, I get ma2. So you have to take care of all the terms very carefully. M has to be multiplied throughout the equation. So I'm going to get minus ms1 plus 0s2 plus 0a1 plus ma2, and here also I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to transform the 6 from the right to the left, and it is also multiplied with m, so minus 6m. So this also has been transformed into an expression. So I'm going to call this expression as expression number 3, and we have one more equation here. You can name this equation as equation number 4 if you like to. Okay, so now my job is to remove the big penalties from the objective function. So how I can do this? So I'm going to add equation 1, 2 and 3, isn't it? So minus ma1 and plus ma1 will get cancelled, minus ma2 and plus ma2 will get cancelled. So I'm going to simply add equations 1, 2 and 3. So let's add equation 1, 2 and 3. So let's add the 3 equations. Now be very careful while adding the equations. See, what do we have here? In our equations, the very first term is minus of 4x1. So you collect all terms of x1 together. So there is minus of 4x1, then you have 3mx1 and 4mx1. So when you add all these 3, you will be getting minus of 4 plus 3m plus 4m, so plus 7m x1. So z dash is equal to minus 4 plus 3m plus 4m, that became minus 4 plus 7m x1. So that's your first variable added. Let's move on ahead. We have minus x2 plus mx2 and plus 3mx2. When all these terms will get added, let's see what do we get. I'll be getting here plus, put up a plus sign always, minus 1, then plus m and plus 3m became plus 4m, and I have written x2. That was my second variable. Let's move on with the next one. So we have minus 0s1 plus 0s1 minus ms1. So when s1 gets added, you get minus of m s1, isn't it? Let's move ahead. Now we have 0s2 plus 0s2 and plus 0s2. So I'll be getting only 0s2. The next variable is a1. Let's move with a1. So we have minus of ma1 and then plus ma1, isn't it? And then plus 0a1. So minus ma1 and plus ma1 cancels. So a1 has been removed from the objective function. And likewise, if I take minus ma2, let's take minus ma2, then plus 0a2 and plus ma2, isn't it? So I'm going to get rid of this variable also. So a2 has also been gone. But still, so there was entire equation 1 getting added with the second and third equation. Still 2 terms are left. One is minus 3m and one is minus 6m. These are left. So when these two get added, you get minus of 9m. So this is what I've got by adding equation 1, 2 and 3. So what did I do so far? Transformation of the given linear programming problem into standard form. Once it has been transformed into the standard form, the next thing that I did is I am getting rid of the artificial variables and the penalties which were put up in the objective function. So minus ma1 and minus ma2 needs to be removed from the objective functions. And how it was achieved? By taking the help of the equations that I have in the subjective function. So this is my new objective function. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to transform all terms from the right hand side to the left hand side, leaving minus 9m on the right hand side itself, because that's a constant term. See, this is x1, this is x2, then s1, then s2, a1 and a2 has gone. So these are the variables which are involved. So I'm going to take all the terms from the right to the left, leaving minus 9m, the constant on the right hand side. So leave the constants on the right hand side. This is the exact thing that you have learned in simplex method also. The constants were always kept on the right hand side of the objective function, but there we always had the constants as 0. We did not have any constants. So our constant for the very first simplex table was always 0. Here I am getting some constant, and that constant is minus 9m. So let's write the next thing here. The next equation I'm going to write, the objective function I'm going to rewrite, transferring all the terms, all the variables from the right to the left. So I get z dash. This term transfers on the left, it becomes negative. So you got to pay attention now. This term transfers on the left, it becomes negative. So we'll get a minus sign here. Take the minus inside the bracket. So I'll be getting plus, put a bracket. Minus sign goes in, you get 4 minus 7m and x1. So you got to pay attention here. What I've done is I've transferred this term x1 on the left side. It will have a negative sign. The negative sign has been taken inside the bracket. So negative sign has gone inside the bracket. The next term also been transferred on the left side. Again comes to the negative sign. You take it inside. Again it will change to plus 1 minus 4m x2. The next term is going to become plus ms1. So let's write plus ms1. The next term is going to become minus of 0s2. But since it is a 0, it is the coefficient is 0. s2 is accompanied with neutral number 0. So there is no impact whether I put a positive or a negative sign. So I'm going to write it as plus 0 s2. No need to put a negative sign there. And then finally I have this minus 9m. Again remember very properly that the constant will not be transferred on the left side. It has to be left on the right side itself. So that minus 9m term is going to be kept on the right hand side itself. So this is very important. You have to understand all the steps here very carefully. The constant was left on the right hand side. So I'm going to now move further. I'm going to construct the simplex table. Let's understand how to make the simplex table for this particular standard form. So students, let's go ahead with the simplex table. Now what I've done here is I have rewritten the entire objective function one more time with all the decision variables, the slack and the surplus variables, and our artificial variables. And I have kept the constant on the right hand side. So this point has to be remembered properly, that the constant will always be kept on the right hand side. So I have written z dash plus 4 minus 7m x1 and then x2, s1, s2, a1, a2, all of the terms, all of the variables, and the right hand side contains the constant. Then I have written the three subjective functions that I had. So the first subjective function is written, second and the third. So now let's make our simplex table. Now you remember that a simplex table had nothing but what? The basic variables, the coefficients of all the variables involved, the right hand side of the constants termed as xb, and the minimum ratio. Now the concept is going to remain exactly same. I have to first decide what are my basic variables. Now the basic variables can be obtained from the basic matrix. Here I'm going to get the basic matrix. The basic matrix has to be a unit matrix. The next thing, once I get the basic variables, then I have to decide who goes out and who comes in. One variable will go out and the other variable will come in, depending on whether I've got the optimum solution or not. And whether I've reached the optimum solution or not will be decided by the row of z dash. So all these concepts of the simplex method we are again going to make use in the penalty method also. So I strongly recommend you that you go and watch my all previous lectures of simplex method, and then you come and watch this particular video, this particular lecture. So I'm going to fill up this table now. First of all, I'll make the row of z dash, isn't it? This is how we have also done in simplex method. So let's first of all write z dash here. So I'm going to write z dash at the beginning, and then I'll write all the coefficients of the variables which are involved. So the first variable is x1. The coefficient of x1 is 4 minus 7m. So the first variable is 4 minus 7m. Then for x2 it is 1 minus 4m, isn't it? So the two variables x1 and x2, 4 minus 7m, 1 minus 4m. Next one is s1. It has the variable m, the coefficient m. Then there is s2, its coefficient is 0. a1 is also 0, a2 is also 0. And the right hand side is minus 9m. So let's write minus 9m. Now, once I have put up the row of z dash, what I can do next is now fill up all the variables, the coefficient of all the variables from the subjective functions. So there is x1, x2, s1, s2, a1 and a2, and the right hand side is 3. This is going to be the xb, sorry, and we will put up all the coefficients, all the variables over here, isn't it? So x1 has what? 3. x1 has coefficient 3. So I'm going to write 3 here. Then x2 has coefficient 1. Then s1 has 0. s2 again has 0. a1 has coefficient 1. Then a2 has coefficient 0. Next is x1 has coefficient 4. x2 has 3. s1 has coefficient negative 1. So you got to take care now. Then s2 has coefficient 0. a1 has coefficient 0. a2 has coefficient 1. The right hand sides here are 3, 6, isn't it, for the second equation. Let's move ahead with the next one. So I have x1 coefficient is 1, x2 coefficient is 2, s1 is 0, s2 is 1, a1 is 0, a2 is 0, and then I have 4, isn't it, the right hand side of the constraint, it is 4. Now over here I'm going to get a basic matrix, which is actually a unit matrix. So a unit matrix should look like what? 1 0 0, 0 1 0 and 0 0 1. Now in simplex method, most of the time our basic variables were s1, s2, s3 and so on. If I try to take the same variables, same slack and the surplus variables as my basic variables, it is not going to help, because if you observe s1, it is 0 minus 1 0, isn't it? So negative 1 has come. That means this is not going to help me to make a basic matrix. So the basic matrix has to look like a unit matrix with the first column as 1 0 0. So from all these variables you find out which is going to give you 1 0 0. So if you observe a1, it is going to give us 1 0 0, isn't it? So the a1 variable gives us 1 0 0. Then you find 0 1 0, it is given by a2, isn't it? So a2 is our next basic variable, 0 1 0. Then you find out 0 0 1. So 0 0 1 not present in s1, 0 0 1 present in s2. So that becomes my third basic variable, and these three variables together are going to form the basic matrix, which is also a unit matrix. Students, this is what you want to pay attention for. How do I decide my basic variables? Basic variables are those variables given by the basic matrix. So I have a1, a2 and then s2, isn't it? So a1 gave me 1 0 0, a2 gave me 0 1 0 and s2 gave me 0 0 and 1. So I'm going to put up the basic variables here. So I'm going to write here a1, then a2, and then I'll be getting s2. So this is how we have decided the basic variables for the given simplex tables. You got to pay proper attention here, that if you want the basic variables, they have to form the basic matrix, and the basic matrix is nothing but what? A unit matrix. Okay, now I need to decide who is going to go out and who is going to come in, which variable leaves and which variable enters. Now if you remember that the incoming vector was decided by the most negative term, isn't it? Most negative term of the row z dash. You got to remember that. We will decide the incoming vector by the most negative term in the row of z dash. Now here there is the concept, there is the constant m involved. M was nothing but what? It is like money, isn't it? Big penalty, big money we are going to give. So m is a very large number. M is a very large number. You can take m as 10,000, 1 lakh, 10 lakh, anything. So m is a very large number. So this concept now you remember. The incoming vector is going to be that vector the incoming vector is going to be that vector or the variable which will have the highest or the maximum negative coefficient of m, highest negative coefficient of m. Listen to the statement one more time and make sure you are also noting down this statement in your notebook. The incoming vector is decided by that variable which has the highest negative coefficient of m, highest negative coefficient of m. So here m is positive, so this is not the incoming vector. Here m has coefficient -4, here m has coefficient -7. So this is our term which has the highest negative coefficient of m. So you got to emphasize this point very thoroughly, very properly, that the incoming vector is that vector which, or that variable which will have the highest negative coefficient of m. So x1 becomes our incoming vector because it has the highest coefficient, negative coefficient of m. So this is highest negative coefficient of m. So this becomes our incoming vector. So x1 is going to be the incoming vector. So this is our incoming vector. So if you remember, this is also called as the key column, isn't it? So incoming vector you call, or you call as the key or the pivot column. So that is our first concept of the simplex table when we are solving the question by penalty method. So now we have decided who is going to come in, isn't it? x1 is a variable which has to enter into the simplex table. If x1 has to enter, someone has to leave out of a1, a2 and s2. Someone has to leave from here. Now that will be obviously decided by the minimum ratio, and it can be obtained by simply doing xb upon xn. xb was the right hand side of all the subjective functions and xn is our incoming vector. So this is xn. So this is x. I'm going to write over here. This is xn. Okay. So x1 has become xn. So let's get the minimum ratio. Exactly same way as we have learned in the simplex table. We are going to ignore all negative terms and all infinite ratios. Negative ratios and infinite ratios in the minimum ratio will again and again be completely ignored. If you have all the ratios coming negative or infinity, that means a given linear programming problem will have an unbounded solution. Make a note of this point. If all minimum ratio came negative or infinity, then the given linear programming problem has unbounded solution. So let's get the minimum ratio now. What do we have here? We have 3, isn't it? xb is 3, xn is 3, so I get 3 divided by 3, which is 1, isn't it? Then I have 6 divided by 4, so I'm going to write 6 divided by 4, it is 3 upon 2, so 3 upon 2 is nothing but 1.5, isn't it? 3 upon 2 is 1.5. And finally I have 4 divided by 1, so 4 divided by 1 is going to be 4. So out of the 3 ratios that I can see here, the minimum ratio is 1, isn't it? The minimum ratio is 1. That means now I can tell that A1 is the variable which has to leave, isn't it? So A1 leaves the simplex table and who enters? X1 enters. So this variable A1 will be called as an outgoing vector. So I'm going to call A1 as outgoing vector. So I'll write down over here, this is A1 which is our outgoing vector. This is also called as the key row, or it is also called as the pivot row. So all the terminologies, all the concepts are exactly same as simplex method. So that is why I am stressing more on first going and watching all lectures of simplex method and then coming and observing what the penalty method is. Then you will understand penalty method in a more better way. Now, the intersection of the incoming and the outgoing vector, or the pivot row and pivot column, or we say the key row or key column, the intersection of them is called as the key element. So 3 becomes our key element, or it is also called as a pivot element. And we know that we have to proceed with the next simplex table because there is still the negative m, isn't it? Negative m is present over there. Unless and until all the coefficients of m become positive or 0, I have to keep on proceeding with the simplex table. So I can see there are two terms which are still with negative sign of m. Negative m is still present. That means I have to go further to make the new simplex table. And in the next simplex table, what we'll be doing is we'll make this 3, this pivot element, this key element, this 3 is going to be transformed as 1. So students, I want you to note down this entire table very properly in your notebook first. So I'll remove this part from here, make a new simplex table. So far you all understood this 3 has to be made 1, and it can be made 1 by simply dividing the entire row by 3, isn't it? So let's make the next simplex table. That was the first simplex table, the initial simplex table. We will proceed towards the next simplex table, which we called as the iteration 1. So students, so far we have made the initial simplex table. What I've done here is I've made the initial simplex table one more time. We have already decided who is going to be the incoming vector and who is going to be the outgoing vector. So x1 is the incoming vector, and who is going to leave the table? A1 was the outgoing vector, and their intersection is the pivot element. So 3 is the pivot element. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to rewrite my basic variables. So the basic variables are going to change. So let's write the basic variables. A1 leaves, x1 enters. So let's write x1. Before that, I will also write z dash. So let's write z dash also, and then we will be writing the basic variables. So that is the row of z dash. Then we write the basic variables. A1 leaves, x1 enters. So I've written x1 here. Next one is a2. So let's write a2, and finally we have s2. Now, if you observe that a1 was an artificial variable. Artificial variable as such are nothing but variables which need not be evaluated. We do not need the values of a1. They are some random variables, isn't it? So as soon as a1 has left the table, what you can make a note of is, as soon as a1 leaves the table, there is absolute no need to do any calculation for the A1 column. This is a very important note, students. You got to understand this point very properly. Artificial variables as such has no existence in the table. They are just any random variables which need not be calculated. So as soon as you observe that any of the artificial variables leaves the table, we need not do any kind of calculations for that particular column. This will save our time. So you got to make a note of this point, that as soon as the artificial variable leaves the table, we will not do any kind of calculations for that variable. So A1 has left, isn't it? Now x1 is the new incoming vector, and the variable here, the variable A1 had value 3. This pivot element 3 has to be made 1, and it can be achieved by simply dividing the entire row with 3. So let's do that first. Let's divide the entire row of A1 with 3. So I'll be getting 1 here. The pivot element has to change, isn't it? That becomes 1. Then this gets divided by 3. So I get 1 by 3. The next element is 0. Next one is again 0, because you are going to divide 0 with 3, so you're going to get 0. No need to do any calculation for A1, isn't it? I have completely ignored A1 now because A1 has left the table. Let's move ahead. So here it is again 0. It gets divided by 3, you get 0. And then 3 gets divided by 3, you get 1. So that is the new changed row of x1. Once you know that the pivot element has become 1, the next thing you want to carry out is all other elements of the same column should become 0. Every other element of the column has to become 0. So I can observe here that there is 4 minus 7m, isn't it? 4 minus 7m. So 4 minus 7m is R0. I'm going to call it as R0, isn't it? And here we have R1. So you have to be very careful. You have to juggle up in the two tables. So R0 is here, R1 is here. The changed row is in the next simplex table, and the rows that I need to change are present in the previous simplex table. So there is 4 minus 7m. So we have R0. So I'll write R0 here, which is 4 minus 7m. So minus of 4 minus 7m into, you have to take the help of the pivot element which is present in R1. So R1. So the very first value is definitely going to become 0 because I have written the row operation based on this value only, isn't it? I have to take care of the next element. So it is 1 minus 4m. So R0 is 1 minus 4m minus of 4 minus 7m into, what's the value of R1? It is 1 by 3. So let's write 1 by 3 here. Let's do the simplification properly. So there is 1 minus 4 by 3. 1 minus 4 by 3. Then minus of 4m. Minus of 4m. Minus 4 and 1 by 3 got me minus 4 by 3, minus minus became plus 7m into 1 by 3, so that's 7m upon 3. On simplification I'll be getting 3 minus 4, so that's minus 1 by 3. I'll write here minus 1 by 3, isn't it? And then minus 4m into 3, that's minus 12m plus 7m, so minus 12 plus 7 is minus 5m upon 3. So that's my next value. Now I can observe that m has come negative. As soon as I realize that m has come negative, I should be very sure that I will have to proceed further for the next simplex table. As soon as all values come non-negative, I can be rest assured that the last simplex table has reached. But unless and until you get all non-negative numbers, you cannot tell that, isn't it? So unless you have all negative values present over here, you cannot say that you have reached the optimum solution. So let's proceed further. The value is m here, isn't it? The value is m here. So I'm going to write m. So I'll remove this part from here. Let's remove this calculations from here. The next value is m. So R0 is m minus R1 value. R1 value is here. It is 0. So m minus 0. You'll be getting m here. So let's write m. Then S2 is 0 here, isn't it? So 0. And here also I see 0. So 0 minus 0. You get 0. No need to do the calculations for A1. Let's go to A2. It is 0 present over here. So you write R0 is 0. R1 is also 0. So this value also remains 0. So let's calculate the last value. It is R0, which is minus 9m. So I'll be writing here minus 9m. Then minus of 4 minus 7m into the value here is 1. So to be very careful with the terms, isn't it? So multiplies with 1. So when you simplify, you get minus 9m minus 4, isn't it? And negative negative becomes plus 7m. So the ultimate answer is going to be minus 4 and minus 2m. So I can write here minus 4 minus 2m. So minus of 4 and minus 2m, isn't it? So minus 4 and minus 2m is the answer that I've got. Let's remove the row operation from here. So that was your first row, isn't it? Simplification of the first row. Let's move on with the other rows also. So this 4 and 1 also has to become 0. So let's make this element as 0. Now you can observe from here, since x1 is your first basic variable, it has to look 1 0 0. So you can save your time over here. You can straight away write 1 0 0. Then there is A2. So A2 is going to look like 0 1 0. Then there is S2. It is going to look like 0 0 and 1. So you have to be very careful, but while writing the row operation. So here there is 4. So you want to make it 0, isn't it? So that's your second row. That is R2 and that is R3, isn't it? So R2 and R3 are present in the previous row, the previous simplex table, and R1 is present in the next simplex table. You have to always take the help of this one, the pivot element, to make rest of the elements as 0. So there is R2 here. So I will be writing R2, which is 4 minus of 4 times of R1, isn't it? So surely I'm going to get 0 here. And finally for S2 it is 1 here, isn't it? And is also 1. So I'll be doing R3 minus R1. So this is also going to become 0. So these are the two row operations I will need to do for R2 as well as R3. At the next point I can say that A2 is going to look 0 1 0. No need to do any of the calculations because these are the basic variables. And then S2 is also going to look 0 0 and 1. So only few of the elements need to be taken care of. So let's take care of the other elements. So we have to do R2 minus 4 R1, isn't it? So what do we have in R2? It is 3 because it is already 0. Next value is 3. Just make sure that you are noting down the things very properly. So R2 is 3 here. So I write R2 is 3. R2 is 3 minus 4 into R1. R1 is 1 by 3. So write 1 by 3. So that's 3 minus 4 by 3. 3 3s are 9. 9 minus 4. So 9 minus 4 will give us 5 upon 3. So I'm going to write here R2 minus 4 R1. So let's remove it from here. So we have 9 minus 5. 9 minus 4, that's 5 upon 3. I write 5 upon 3. Let's move ahead, which is minus 1. So I write minus 1 minus 4 into, it is 0 here, isn't it? So that's going to stay minus 1. No need to do all calculations. Let's move to the last value. It is 6 here, isn't it? So let's write 6. R2 is 6 minus 4 into R1 is 1. So that will give me 2, isn't it? Let's move on to the last calculations. R3 minus R1 is the last row. You are doing R3 minus R1. So that was 1 minus 1. That gave me 0. So that is already written here. Move ahead. It is 2. So write 2 minus. R1 is 1 by 3. 1 by 3. So 3 is 6 minus 1. You again get 5 upon 3. Let's move ahead. The next value is 0. So write R3 is 0. R1 is also 0. You get 0 here. And final value is R3 is 4 minus R1 is 1. You get 3 here. So that's how we have completed the simplex table. Let's get the minimum ratio also. For that I need to decide who is the most negative value of m, the most negative coefficient of m. So here it is already positive m, so this is not the most negative m. Negative m is present here, minus 5 upon 3. So I can for sure say that x2 is now going to become our incoming vector. So x2 is our incoming vector. That's x in, isn't it? We call it as the incoming vector. So this is incoming vector here, x2. And then I need to decide the outgoing vector. It can be simply decided by the minimum ratio xb upon x in. Look at the values of xb. We have 1, 2 and 3 divided with x in values. These are the x in values. So 1 gets divided by 1 by 3. So 1 gets divided by 1 by 3. The value comes 3, isn't it? Come to the next value. 2 gets divided by 5 by 3. So 2 gets divided by 5 upon 3. The value comes 6 upon 5, which is 1 point something, isn't it? So that is going to be 1 point something. And finally 3 gets divided by 5 by 3. 3 gets divided by 5 by 3. You'll get 9 by 5. So 6 upon 5 and 9 upon 5. When the same number is getting divided, isn't it? 6 is getting divided by 5. 9 is also getting divided by 5. The larger number is 9. So obviously 9 upon 5 is a greater number than 6 upon 5. 6 upon 5 was 1 point something. This is 3. That means you can be very sure that A2 is going to be the minimum ratio, isn't it? So this is the minimum ratio. So this becomes your outgoing vector. So now I have decided who is my outgoing vector. So A2 now becomes the outgoing vector, or we say the key row, or we say the pivot row, isn't it? So that's your pivot row, that's your pivot column. The intersection of the two will be called as a pivot element, which is 5 upon 3. So 5 upon 3, students, is our pivot element, isn't it? So the next simplex table I want to proceed, where 5 upon 3 has to be transformed to 1. And have you observed A2 is going to be leaving the simplex table. So already A1 left the table. So we did not do any calculations for A1. A2 is also going to leave the table, isn't it? So A2 calculations will also be ignored from next time onwards, from next simplex table onwards. So A2 leaves and who enters? X2 enters. So X1 and X2 has entered into the simplex table. So I want you to first of all note down this entire solution very properly, so that what I'll do is I'll be making this one simplex table one more time. So students, so far what we have seen is the first simplex table, isn't it? The initial simplex table, then we have taken the first iteration. Now we will move ahead with the next simplex table. We have already decided who was the incoming and the outgoing vector. X2 becomes the incoming vector and A2 is going to be the outgoing vector. Now, you can observe that A2 is the next artificial variable, and I've already told you, as soon as the artificial variable leaves the simplex table, there is absolute no need to do any kind of calculations for that particular variable, isn't it, for the particular artificial variable. So I can observe that A2 is going to leave the table and X2 is going to come in, and the other variables are X1, then A2 leaves, X2 and S2. So let's write it down. So I'm going to write here first of all Z dash, isn't it? Z dash, the first row, Z dash comes, then the next value, the next basic variable is going to be X1. So I'll write X1 here, A2 will leave the table and X2 will enter. So X2, and finally S2 is there. So let's write S2. Now you can be very sure that once these basic variables are identified, it is going to form a basic matrix, isn't it? That means X1 is going to look like 1 0 0, X2 is going to look like 0 1 0, and S2 is going to look like 0 0 1. It is a rule. Whenever you have basic variables, they will definitely form the basic matrix, and if you have the basic matrix, they are going to make the basic variable. So I can see that this value 5 upon 3 is the pivot element. It has to become 1. It can be made 1 by simply multiplying this with what? Multiplying this with 3 upon 5. So let's multiply the second row with 3 upon 5. You get 0 here, you get 0 here. 5 upon 3 multiplies with 3 upon 5. You get 1. Then minus 3 upon 5, isn't it? Next value is minus 3 upon 5. Next value is going to be 0. Now no need to do the calculation for A2 also, because A2 has left the simplex table. A2 has gone from the simplex table. So as soon as your artificial variables leave the simplex table, there is no need to do any kind of calculations for those artificial variables. Let's move ahead. You have XB, which was 2 here. You are dividing this and you are multiplying this with 3 upon 5. So 2 multiplies with 3 upon 5. You get 6 upon 5, isn't it? So that's your next value, 6 upon 5. Now, once you have made the pivot element as 1, the other elements in the same column, all other elements has to become 0. Your first element is this, minus 1 upon 3 minus 5m upon 3. This has to become 0. Then you have to make 1 by 3 and 5 by 3 also equal to 0. But every time you are going to take the help of the pivot element. You have to always take the help of the pivot element here. So what I'll do, I'm going to make use of the space that is allotted for A1 and A2, because I don't have to do any calculations over here. So I'll use this space to do my calculations for all of the rows. Now I know that X1 is my first. X1 is the first basic variable, so it has to look like 1 0 0. So I can blindly write here 1 0 0. Next is X2. It has to look 0 1 0. So I'm going to write 0 1 and 0. So this will save my time, isn't it? Then S2 is there, so it is going to look like 0 0 and 1. Remember that X2 column is going to change, isn't it? So all the row operations will be written taking the help of the X2 column. So here I see this is R0, the very first one. Then there is R1, isn't it? This is the pivot element, so this is going to be R2. So I'm going to write R2 here in the next simplex table, and then this is R1 here and R3 here. So whatever row operations I'm going to write will be from here, and it will be using the pivot element R2 from the next simplex table. Okay, so that's R0. I need to change this value. It is minus 1 by 3 minus 5m upon 3, or I can simply write it negative of 1 plus 5m upon 3, isn't it? That's negative of 1 plus 5m upon 3. That's R0. So I will need R0 plus 1 plus 5m upon 3 multiplies with what? Multiplies with the pivot element, which is 1 here, belongs to the row R2. So I write R2. That means this value is also going to become 0. My job is to make maximum values as 0 in the row of Z dash. As soon as all numbers, all entries in the row of Z dash become non-negative, that means either positive or 0, I can be rest assured that I have reached the final simplex table. The value in the column of XB is going to be the optimum solution. The values of X1 and X2 in the column of XB are going to be the solution, the optimum solution, isn't it? Now let's move further. So this value has become 0. I need to take care of the other values also. No need to get a2, isn't it? a2 I will not be solving because that artificial variable has left the column, left the simplex table. Okay, so this value is 0 here, isn't it? It is 0. I need to change this value. So it is 0, r0 is 0 plus 1 plus 5m upon 3 into r2 value is also 0. So I'm going to get 0 here, isn't it? Then let's move next value. The next value here is S1, which is M. So let's write M, isn't it? R0 is M plus 1 plus 5M upon 3 multiplies with the value of R2, which is minus 3 by 5, multiplies with minus 3 by 5. So students, 3 and 3 will cancel, isn't it? Negative sign is going to come, and then 1 by 5 multiplies inside. So observe carefully. M is there. Minus 1 upon 5 multiplies here. You get minus 1 upon 5. Minus 1 upon 5 multiplies with plus 5m. You get minus m. So plus m minus m cancels. You are left with minus 1 by 5. So you can observe that the negative value is still left even though x1, x2 have entered the simplex table. I could have assumed, I could have predicted that as x1, x2 has already entered the simplex table, this is the final simplex table. But I have to check the row of z dash also. Not even a single entry must be negative entry, isn't it? All entries must be non-negative, either positive or 0. And as soon as I see this minus 1 by 5, I am very much sure that I will have to make one more simplex table. Then only I'll be reaching to the optimum solution. So this minus 1 by 5 is telling me that I have to go one step ahead, isn't it? Let's move to the last value also. It is 0 here, and here also I see 0, isn't it? R2 is used here, R0 is used here, so 0 and 0, I'll be getting 0. No need to calculate a1, a2. Let's move the final value xb. It is minus 4 minus 2m. So let's write it minus 4 minus 2m. So I'm going to write here minus 4 minus 2m, then plus 1 plus 5m upon 3 multiplies with R2 value is here, students. It is here 6 upon 5. 6 upon 5. So let's do the calculation. This is the last value. So let's do the calculation here. You get minus 4 minus 2m. Multiply the 6 upon 5 inside the bracket. So 3 and the 6 cancels. You get 2 here. So that's 2 by 5. So 1 into 2 by 5 is plus 2 by 5. 5 and 5 cancels. You get plus 2m. That means the term of m has left, isn't it? Minus 2m plus 2m will cancel. Minus 4 plus 2 by 5. It is minus 20 plus 2 minus 18 upon 5. So that could have been the maximum solution, isn't it? It could have been the optimum solution. But what the problem is? The problem has happened over here. The negative 1 upon 5 is telling me that this is not the last simplex table. That means whatever value I've got of z until now is not the optimum solution. A1, A2 need not be calculated, so just shade it out. Now let's move ahead with the rest of the values also. So I need to do calculations for R1 and R3. So what is the value here? 1 by 3, isn't it? So I'll remove again this part. So 1 by 3 it is R1. So I'll write R1 minus 1 by 3. Take help of the pivot element. It is here. This is the pivot element, isn't it? This is your pivot element. It is in R2. So R1 minus 1 by 3 R2. So I just need to do this calculation, isn't it? Which is 0 here. So I write R1 is 0 minus 1 by 3 into R2 is minus 3 by 5. You write minus 3 by 5, so 3 cancels, negative negative becomes plus, your value comes 1 upon 5. And let's move to the last value also there. So in the last value we have R1 is 1 minus 1 upon 3. The value of R2, so R2 is in this row, so we take R2 is 6 upon 5, so let's write 6 upon 5 here. So 3 and 6 cancels and you get 2 upon 5, so 1 minus 2 by 5, the answer will come 3 upon 5, isn't it? 3 upon 5. So I'll write 3 upon 5 in this particular row. So that was your R1 row, isn't it? So R1 row is now simplified. Now let's move to the next row, which is the S2 row, isn't it? So we have to work on the S2 row, which is actually the row 3, R3, and the value here is 5 upon 3, and we want to make it 0. So I have already written it as 0. I have already discussed all the shortcut techniques. Make sure that you use the shortcut techniques very properly. So here the value of R3, which is 5 upon 3 here, I want to make it 0. So I'm going to change my elementary row transformation. So I want to change the row 3. So I'll write R3 and the value is 5 upon 3, isn't it? So I'll write minus of 5 upon 3 and the value of pivot element which is 1, which is in R2 row. So I'll write R2 here. So definitely these elements are going to become 0, isn't it? So this was 0 here, you can put 0 minus 5 upon 3, R2 value is also 0, so ultimately you get 0 only. So you just have to focus on two elements. One is in the row of S1, only that element I want to calculate, and obviously the column of XB. So let's get this value here, this value. In R3 the value is 0 over here, so I write the value of R3 as 0 minus 5 upon 3 times of the value of R2. So whenever I say R2, you should come to the next simplex table, isn't it? And whenever I say R1 and R3, you should go back to the previous simplex table. So 5 upon 3 and value of R2, it is minus 3 by 5. So I'll write here minus 3 upon 5. So 5 and 5 cancels, 3 and 3 cancel, minus and has become plus 1. So the value here comes plus 1. So it is 0, 0, 1 and 1. Now let's move to the last value here. The last value here, it is 3. So I put R3 as 3 here, and then minus of 5 upon 3 times of R2. The value of R2 we know it is 6 upon 5. So I write 6 upon 5. So 5 and 5 cancels. Then 3 and 6 cancels, you get 2. So 3 minus 2 is going to become 1. So that's the value that we have got here for the last row, isn't it? The row of S2. Now students, if you observe here, the row of Z dash, if you take a look at the row of Z dash, I have already told you, you should get all non-negative numbers in the row of Z dash. As soon as you get the non-negative numbers in the row of Z dash, you can be very sure that you have reached the optimum solution which is given by this particular value. So at this moment I can observe there is minus 1 upon 5. So this negative value of 1 upon 5 is telling me that I have to definitely move on to the next simplex table, isn't it? So I have not reached up till the optimum solution yet. So I need to make one more simplex. So before I go to the next simplex table, I also now need to decide who is the outgoing vector and who is the incoming vector, isn't it? Now obviously the negative minus 1 upon 5, the negative minus 1 upon 5 now tells us that S1 is going to be the incoming vector, isn't it? So S1 will be the incoming vector. Now since S1 is going to be the incoming vector, so someone has to leave from the table, and that will be told by the minimum ratio. So let's quickly get the minimum ratio. So S1 is the incoming vector, so I'm going to write here incoming vector. Okay, and then let's get the minimum ratio also. So to get the minimum ratio, what we'll do is we'll divide XB with the incoming vector, isn't it? So we'll be dividing XB with the minimum with the incoming vector. So I get 3 upon 5 divided by 1 upon 5. So 3 by 5 divided by 1 by 5 will give me 3, isn't it? So 3 by 5 divides with 1 by 5, you get 3. Then 6 upon 5, when it gets divided by minus 3 upon 5, it is going to give us a negative value, and we all know that the negative value should always be discarded. So I'm going to discard or ignore this particular value because it is going to come negative. So 6 upon 5 divided by minus 3 upon 5, it's a negative answer. So discard this value. Let's move to the last row. It is 1 divided by 1. So 1 divides with 1, you get 1. So now pretty well you have understood that the minimum ratio is definitely going to be 1, isn't it? So if 1 is the minimum ratio, I can say that S2 becomes my outgoing vector, isn't it? S2 becomes my outgoing vector. I'll remove these calculations that I've done, the rough calculations. We know that A1 and A2 need not be calculated further. A1 and A2, these were the artificial variables. They have left the table, they have left the simplex table, so need not be calculated again. So our outgoing vector is S2 and our incoming vector is S1. That means now when I make the next simplex table, and of course we have to make one more simplex table. In the next simplex table, S1 will be incoming vector and S2 will be the outgoing vector. So I'll note down here that this is the outgoing vector. And have you noticed that the intersection of the incoming and the outgoing vector, which is 1 here, isn't it? The intersection of the incoming and the outgoing vector, which is called as a pivot element, which is 1. We need to make this value as 1 as we have already done, isn't it? But it is already 1. We did not make it again. We did not simplify it again to again make it 1. So the next simplex table, we simply going to change S2 with what? S1, and there is no need to do any kind of changes to this particular row. So when I make the next simplex table, I will straight away change S2 with S1, maintain the same row as it is, and once I make this as 1, which is already I know, then this element will be taken to make the other elements in this entire column equal to 0. So students, this was all about the simplex table. Now definitely we have to go further. We have to make one more simplex table because of this negative 1 upon 5. So I'm going to erase this all from here. I'm going to make the simplex table one more time. So students, let's begin with the next step, the next simplex table, isn't it? So what I've done here is I've made the previous simplex table one more time, and then I'm going to proceed further. Looking at z dash, there is one negative 1 upon 5 present over there. So from there I've decided that I have to go one more step ahead. I have the S2 as the outgoing vector and S1 as the incoming vector. So I'm going to rewrite my basic variables, isn't it? So let's rewrite all the basic variables. The first value is going to be, the first variable is going to be z dash, then x1 as it is going to come, so write x1, then you write x2, and s2 is going to leave the simplex table, and in place of s2, s1 is going to enter, isn't it? So I'll write s1 over here. So these are my new basic variables, and I can see that the pivot element is already 1. That means there is absolute no need to change this entire row. So let's rewrite the row as it is here. So I'm going to write s1. The pivot element is already 1. That is the reason I am not changing any of the values over here. So I get 0, then again 0, S1 is 1, S2 is also 1. No need to do any kind of calculations for A1 and A2 because these were the artificial variables and they have already left the simplex table. Then we have again 1 here, and finally this entire row is written. Let's now change all other elements of the column of the key column, isn't it? So let's change all the elements to 0. Let's change all these elements to 0 now. So the very first one is minus 1 upon 5. I want to change it to plus 1 upon 5. So let's do it, and that can be done by using the elementary row transformation R0, isn't it? This is R0 here, and then minus 1 upon 5. So I'll write plus 1 upon 5 into, over here I'm going to make use of the last row, which is R3 here. So let's write the last row as R3. So I'm going to write R3 here. So I'm going to straight away get 0 at this place, isn't it? Let's do the other calculations also. So I have R0 as 0 plus 1 upon 5 into this value is also 0. R3 is 0. So whenever you want to take R3, come into this particular simplex table. Whenever you want to get R1, R2, go to the previous simplex table. So I'll be getting 0 at this place also because R0 was 0, R3 was also 0. So I'll get 0 here. Then let's go to the next one, x2. This is R0, 0. R3 is also 0. So I get 0. This already is 0 because this is the elementary transformation was written taking a look at this particular element only, isn't it? Let's move ahead with the next value. There is 0 here, so R0 is 0. R3 is 1, so the value comes 1 upon 5, and I'm not going to get anything for A1 and A2. So have you observed that all values of the row Z dash are either positive or they are 0? That means I can for very sure say that I have reached to the final simplex table. I have got the optimum solution. So whatever value I'm going to get in the column of XB is going to be the optimum solution. So let's quickly get the value of XB here also. So that's minus 18 upon 5. So write minus 18 upon 5 plus 1 upon 5 into R3 is 1. So let's write 1 here. So my answer comes minus 17 upon 5. So that was the calculation for the row Z dash. Now I also now need to make the other two elements of the same column equal to 0. So this 1 upon 5 has to become 0. This minus 3 upon 5 has to become 0. Let's take the first one, that's R1. So the row operation that I'll need here is now R1, that is plus 1 upon 5. So I'll need minus 1 upon 5 into, take help of the pivot element which is here now. So R3, so that is going to be my elementary row transformation. Now further I can also do some shortcut techniques over here that I've already explained, that x1, x2 and s1, they are the basic variables. So for sure their values are going to be, x1 is the first basic variable, so it's going to be 1 0 0. X2 is the second basic variable, so 0 1 and 0, and then comes s1, so it is definitely going to look like 0 0 and 1. But you have to write the elementary row transformations looking at these values. These values are going to change, isn't it? So 1 upon 5 has to become 0. So this is the row operation that I have written. Let's do the other calculation. So this is 0 here, isn't it? Only two values left now. and the values of xb. So let's get the values very quickly. So I have 0 here, minus 1 upon 5 into R3 is 1. So that gives me minus 1 by 5. Let's move ahead. That's 3 upon 5 here. So R1 is 3 upon 5. Minus 1 upon 5 into 1. So that gives me 2 by 5. So let's write 2 by 5 here. Let's proceed further. Now I need to also make this element minus 3 by 5 equal to 0, isn't it? So this element also has to become 0. That's R2. So I will need to write R2, isn't it? Then that's minus 3 by 5. So I'll need to make it as plus 3 by 5 into, take the help of the pivot element which is now present here. So that's R3 row into R3. So the previous elements are definitely not going to change. Only this element I want to focus on. So that's 0 here. R2 is 0 here, isn't it? Plus 3 by 5 into R3 value is 1. So this value becomes plus 3 by 5, isn't it? And finally I'll go here and change this value also. So I have R2 value as 6 upon 5 plus 3 upon 5 into the value of R3 is 1. So I write 1 here. That gives me 9 upon 5. So this is 9 upon 5. So these are the values that I've got so far in the column of xb. I already know that no need to do any calculations for a1 and a2. So students, now you observe here that your final row of z dash has given you either all positive values or 0 values, isn't it? There is no negative term. So as soon as you get row of z dash as non-negative, as soon as you get the row of z dash as non-negative, be rest assured that you have reached at the final simplex table, isn't it? So the value of z dash in the column of xb, this is going to be your optimum solution. So minus 17 upon 5 is our optimum solution, isn't it? So that's our optimum solution. Further, the values of x1 and x2 in the column of xb are given here, 2 upon 5 and 9 upon 5. So what I'm going to do here, students, I'm going to erase some part from here and I'm going to write the final answer. So let's write the final answer. I hope you have already copied all the things very properly in your notebooks. So let's write the final solution. So the problem was solved for maximizing. So I'm going to write maximum value, isn't it? So maximum value of, it was z dash, it is obtained as minus 17 upon 5. Minus 17 upon 5. But do you remember that the question was actually asked for minimum value? So therefore the minimum value now becomes z, which is minus of z dash. So it's going to come 17 upon 5. So that's your optimum solution. And this optimum solution is obtained at a particular point. The values of that point are given by x1 and x2 from the column of xb. So therefore x1 will become 2 upon 5 and x2 will become 9 upon 5. Now students, if you take these values and put up in your objective function that was given to you, I will guarantee that you will definitely get your answer as 17 upon 5, isn't it? So make sure that you take these values and put up in the original question also to cross check whether you have really got the optimum solution or not. So students, this is what the penalty method, or we say the big M method, or we say the Charney's method is. Understand the entire concept very thoroughly, very properly. If you have to watch the video again, make sure that you watch it, understand all the basic concepts, all the basic notes that I've given you while taking the solution. And students, I want you to practice more questions of this method because this is a slightly challenging method, isn't it? It will need tremendous amount of practice to master this particular method. So students, I'm going to leave you here. Make sure that you keep practicing. I thank you very much for watching this lecture. You have all a great day ahead.